Hi, I'm Maren and welcome back to my channel, Maren Makes It. In this week's video, I wanted to take you guys along on a moving day with me. So last week I talked a little bit about how I've been using house sitting as a way to house hack and not pay rent at all. And I figured what better way to give you guys some insight into how my life actually looks when I'm doing this than to vlog a day and take you guys along for the ride with me. Quite literally the ride to a new house sit. Hi guys, so I'm here at a new house sit and I figured I would do a little vlog today of how I kind of settle into a new place and I'm meeting the new pets and just kind of what my process is there. I generally try to be pretty nice to myself on these days. It's really easy to be hard on yourself and expect yourself to be just as productive with other things as well, because I always kind of lose the flow with my work and with YouTube and all the other things I'm trying to work on. I kind of get out of the flow when I move. It's kind of always a little bit of a disruptor, and it always also kind of makes me re-question, you know, my decisions and my life and why I'm doing all this. So I try to be a little bit kinder to myself on these days and remind myself that, you know, anybody would be stressed out when they're moving, and anybody stressed out when they're packing and when they're in a new environment. But it definitely is easier said than done sometimes, especially because I've just been doing this for so long that it feels like the normal to me. So I think when it feels like not normal, it's a little bit easier in a way to be nice to yourself with stuff like this. Whereas when this is your normal, it can be pretty easy to be hard on yourself. The way I really try to view it is like this is an adventure, and so you're gonna have really high highs in an adventure, but you're also gonna have really low lows. Like normal life, like maybe it fluctuates like this much, and my life can fluctuate like this much. But, you know, in order to get those really high highs, we sometimes have to have like really low lows. I also try to remind myself of the time that I'm spending moving is kind of time that I'm getting paid. So I know I'm not getting paid in the traditional sense, but because I'm saving so much money in rent, I try to view it as like almost another part-time job. And when I put on that mindset of like, you are working, you're just working for a barter instead of like for cash directly, it really helps me mentally not feel like, wow, this is taking up so much of my time. So I went ahead and already got groceries for the new place. I know that once I'm kind of getting in there and getting settled, I know I'm probably not gonna wanna leave the house again. So I figured I would get groceries already on the way here so that I won't have to do that. For myself personally, the first thing I always try to unpack is gonna be any freezer bags or food that I have, just because that's the stuff that tends to heat up and really the only thing that's really truly time sensitive. I generally know that I'm not really in the mood to cook when I'm in a new place. The only thing is these frozen meals did thaw a bit, and so I'm kind of looking through them. That's why I opened them already to see which ones have thawed the most. Those are the ones I'm gonna put in the fridge, and the other ones I'm gonna put in the freezer. Miraculously, none of these eggs broke, even though the carton got completely squished in the side of the bag. Stuff was in my car for just a little bit too long, and we ended up with some of the meals not being thawed anymore, which I'm not super worried about because I can put them in the fridge and I'll probably be eating them in the next few days anyway. But it's a little bit annoying to me because sometimes I do have stuff go bad, and actually I had to throw out some food that I meal prepped because it was at refrigeration temperature and now it was at room temperature, and I smelled it and I was like, yeah, like you can smell that sour smell coming from it. I was like, yep, we're not going there. It's just not worth it. But I really hate food waste and throwing out food, so I try to minimize that as much as possible. In terms of other food, I generally always have cans of soup with me. I learned this when I was first camping and traveling. Okay, these are both vegetable barley. Okay, there's a lot of vegetable barley in there, but my favorite ones are really the lentil ones. But cans of soup is a great thing for camping or traveling, and you can actually find some pretty healthy ones like these ones. It's a good way to get some vegetables in, and you don't have to worry about the whole freezer problem that I just had unpacking those other bags. When I get into a new house sitting situation, I always try to spend a little bit of extra time with the pets, whether that's playtime or kind of feeding them or giving them some treats, depending on kind of what type of animal it is and the owner. But I really want them to start to be comfortable with me from the start and not see me as a threat as I like walk in the door and I'm so much bigger than them and I come in with all this stuff that they don't recognize and all these smells that they don't recognize. I really want to make them feel comfortable with me right from the start. So I try to invest a little bit of time up front to try and speed up that process and make them realize that I'm not a threat as I'm coming into their space. As I'm here meeting a new friend right now, this is Rue. She is a rabbit. We're gonna put this on her plate over here for her. She's definitely checking me out. She's already letting me pet her. That's so cute. Oh my gosh, watching this rabbit eat is so adorable. It's truly like these little moments that just, I think it's so important to appreciate the little moments because it's really the little things that add happiness to your life. There's a quote I really like, if I can find it, I'll put it on the screen, but it's basically that like happiness is, you know, basically created by our mind and not actually created by our circumstances a lot of the time. And it's really like what you are thinking about and what you're choosing to focus on. And I think this is just always such a great reminder of that with the animals, because like when you focus on like, wow, how cute the bunny is and how cute it is that the bunny's eating and letting you pet her. And it just like, it's kind of like a little hug, like from the universe of just like things are all gonna be okay. Oh my gosh, I don't know why that's making me so upset to think about, but I think it's just that, honestly, it's been a rough last couple of days here. I had a couple days between house sits here. It was kind of a pain to figure out what to do with those. But basically, by the end of this week, I will have slept in 5 different places in 8 days, which I haven't done that much traveling that quickly in a long time or that much moving around. And when it's summertime temperatures out, like the heat and all of this, it's just like, it's kind of exhausting. It's just so hard to focus on anything when you don't know where you're going to be sleeping that night. And it's interesting because actually this whole like situation and house sitting and traveling for so long has definitely given me a lot more empathy for, you know, people in shelters or that may be experiencing homelessness for periods of time. And I'm not like comparing myself to that at all because I know my situation is very different. I'm doing this by choice and not as much by necessity. But when you don't know where you're sleeping, like it's really hard to focus on other things because your basic needs aren't being met. We all have basic needs of like food, water, you know, air, and then kind of needs of like shelter and then come sort of our belonging needs and then other things like fulfillment and stuff and like job related stuff. But when you don't know where you're going to be sleeping or where you're going to be staying, first of all, like one, it's really difficult to think about other things, like to even think about all your options, because people are like, well, homeless people have so much time, like why don't they just get a job? And it's like, you know, but maybe not be so quick to say that, like, oh, they have all day to find a job, like why don't they just get one? Like maybe they're thinking about other things, you know, maybe their energy is being used up on other things. And if you constantly have so much change going on in your life and those shelter needs are not being met or constantly changing, like I can see how it might not be so easy as, you know, even I would have said in the past, like, why don't they just get a job, honestly? And I can see how that is not so easy after all. The thing I think that factors into this too about like, it might not be so easy to have a job if you're constantly moving, which I feel too, because I keep thinking about if I should get an in-person part-time job just to have a little bit more consistency with people and with my income. But it's really hard to commit to something like that when you don't know where you're gonna be sleeping. And it's like, well, one house sit, that job might be like 10 minutes away from me, and another one that might be like 30 minutes or 40 minutes away. And then you start to really get into commute time and gas prices, and is it even worth it if you're only working part-time? And then on top of that, I think just in general, it's hard to commit to stuff. Like, for example, last weekend I had a photo shoot and I had committed to that photo shoot before I even knew my like house sit before that or my house sit after it. So like I was already booked in for that before I knew anything about my living situations during that time, which is fine. Like obviously you can plan for the commute time, but the problem was I ended up moving on that weekend. And so it ended up being a way more stressful weekend. But it's like, I just, you know, when I committed to that, I didn't know that the house sits would fall that way and it would just work out that way. So, you know, it can make committing to things in the future that's more than like maybe a week or two away really difficult. And that's definitely something I'm struggling with too, is committing to things that are further away. But sometimes you have to commit that far in advance in order to be able to do something. So it's just tough. I generally am somebody who would prefer to commit to something like later on, like at the last minute when I know that I can actually definitely hold my word, as opposed to really early in advance and then possibly having to cancel. Anyways, I think you can see how this kind of applies to working too, where it's like it's hard to commit to something when you don't even know where you're going to be sleeping during that time. And it's hard to just be consistent with anything, whether that's in your friendships or relationships or exercise, frankly, when everything's constantly changing. I mean, when you don't have like a consistent base under you, it's just much harder to commit to anything at all. And I have a super cute bunny here who is trying to get my attention. So I just did a bunch of dishes here by hand, which is probably my least favorite household chore, which is why I did it, because I knew that I don't want to procrastinate it any longer. I'm trying to start the new place off with a good routine here of not letting the dishes pile up too much. I've been working on is settling in a little bit, so it's always a little bit weird with this because you know, people's normal stuff is still here. They're just on vacation. It's not like an Airbnb, which is like an empty house that you go to. So when I get to a new place, it's always a little bit of a struggle of figuring out, okay, where am I gonna put my stuff? Sometimes I'll move around their stuff a little bit to create a little bit of space, and other times people will actually do it for me. So this girl was really sweet here, and she actually made a little shelf here for me, and she did the same thing in the bathroom. Sometimes people will do that, and sometimes honestly, if they don't, I'll kind of move things together like that. Just not that I'm like, you know, rearranging all their stuff, but just like, you know, sometimes you leave things kind of spaced out if you don't have a reason to kind of make it a little bit more compact. And so I'll just kind of push things together. I'll do this sometimes too with like hangers in a closet, where I'll just kind of push them together a little bit if I really need to hang something up. So I just had a little bit of lunch. I made scrambled eggs and toast and black beans and just sort of some leftover veggies that I just scrambled all together in a pan. I figured I would keep it really easy. I actually used part of one of the meal preps I had in the fridge that was kind of thawed, and I wanted to make sure I use it before it goes bad. Now I do have to do a little bit of paperworky kind of stuff. So I have my planner laying here. This right here is like the key to my entire life and staying organized between multiple different jobs and house sits and trying to make videos more consistently, and also trying to have a social life on top of it, and trying to also take care of myself. So sometimes one of those things definitely goes by the wayside, and depending on which week it is, it might be a different one. I think this week, the thing that's taken the biggest hit is definitely sleep. But I think different times in my time house sitting, it's been different things. Definitely when I first came to Denver, socializing was something that took a big hit for me. Exercising, I wasn't really doing either. So, you know, it's always a constant struggle to keep everything in balance, but I also want to be cautious not to just blame this on the house sitting, because I think in regular life, it's also still a challenge to keep everything in balance when you're juggling multiple things. And this isn't just for people who might have multiple jobs, but also like people who are parents, or people who, you know, have other hobbies or interests that they're trying to do. Or people who are taking care of a family member. There's lots of reasons why you might have this feeling of kind of just juggling a bunch of different things. Anyway, for me, having it all on paper just really helps me. I need to see it visually. Somehow the Google Calendar thing just doesn't seem to work the same for me. So it is evening now of me settling in at this house sit, and I just want to show you guys something. And this is the kind of stuff that makes me wonder how long this is going to be sustainable for, because you just end up wasting a lot of time on stuff that really shouldn't take that long. Like I probably just spent about 30 minutes figuring out how to use the blinds in this bedroom in order to be able to pull them down so that I'm not staring at the lights, or like people aren't staring in from the street overnight. But it was very difficult to do. I didn't want to pull too hard either, because I didn't want to accidentally break something while I'm here. But this is the kind of like energy and adapting that, first of all, I think is really cool to build up in yourself, that you're able to adapt to different situations, but also the kind of things that take like a really long time and can make it really hard to work normal hours or have a social life and stuff, because you're spending a lot of time on kind of everyday tasks in addition to the moving and also figuring out the next place that you're going to live. So, you know, nothing wrong with this. Like, it's not like a bad thing, I would say necessarily. It's just food for thought. Anyways, I basically spent the afternoon doing some paperwork, working on editing a YouTube video, which by the time this posts will have already been posted. It will be the one on the story of how I first camped in my car. And then I talked on the phone with my sister for a bit. My sister's in Chicago, so I don't get to see her very often, especially with the house sitting. I can't exactly travel there very easily, so I haven't actually seen her since Christmas. So it was really great to be able to catch up with her. Then I just went ahead and made some dinner. I ended up having some of the other things from the groceries that I brought with me, which I knew I wouldn't want to leave the house once I'm kind of settled in here because there was enough commotion going on this morning. So I'm really glad I brought those groceries already with me from the start and I didn't have to go out and spend more money going out to eat or taking that grocery trip at the end of the day. I'm a little bit frustrated that I didn't get to finish my YouTube video entirely. I got really close to being done with the editing, but there's a few things I still just need to trim down, and there's a few pictures I need to find that I want to insert kind of as overlays over me talking to make the video a little bit more entertaining. I'm pretty sleepy already, even though it's only 8:30, so I think I'm just gonna head to bed early tonight, have a fresh brain in the morning, and then be able to tackle it even faster when I wake up. As always, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. See you next time.